Hi there, I'm Fletcher Source and I'm back with a highly requested video topic, which is how to beat certain formations on Football Manager. And I've seen some people make some videos like this before, but I feel they're kind of off in certain areas, and hopefully I can explain why and what I do differently. And hopefully I can teach you how to beat some of the top tested tactics on Football Manager and give you a bit of an insight to how I think and what I do and how I like to play the game. So we'll jump right into it with the first part of this series. I will go over pretty much most of the commonly played tactics. In this example, we're going to talk about how to play against 4-4-2s. Now, I don't believe it's just a shape or formation exploit. I will talk about where the obvious weaknesses of this formation are, and I think it's kind of obvious and self-explanatory, but for those who are not aware, you just have 4 players to cover the midfield. Say you're talking about this as if you're the orange team in this example. You only have 4 players in the midfield, which leaves you with just 2 in the center. So if any team plays a 4-2-3-1, they're going to be able to dominate the midfield in terms of numbers. Or if they wanted to play a 4-3-3, they're going to dominate the midfield, where you're going to be man for man in defense, but you're going to have superiority in the middle. In a 4-4-2, it's clear to see that being able to defend this area and this area is quite difficult with just a 2-man midfield. 2-man midfield, 2-man in the center is going to have to do most of the work. So this is like the shape exploit as well. They're attacking with the front 4, so it's going to look like 4-man versus 4-man, attack versus defense. This is your 4 versus 4. Sorry about that. And if they wanted to push up, say, a wing back, they could get a 5 versus 4. If they wanted to push up a midfielder, they could get a 5 versus 4. If the midfielder can get beyond the opposition midfield, they're going to attack like this. So they're going to have a 4-4-2, but if they've got attacking wing backs and adventurous midfielders, these are going to become part of the attack. But the key weakness is this area is going to be free a lot. I'll show you an example. Say we playing in a 4-3-3. This is the ball. The ball progresses, boom, here, boom, finds its way into the middle. Now, this is how I like, or would like you to think about Football Manager, or football in general, is that who is the player that is going to press this guy? Who's going to vacate their position to press him? Well, it has to be the 8 in this example. Maybe you could argue if you had a pressing forward on support and such, target forward on support, maybe they drop and battle with the number 6, but generally they're going to be behind the player when they start to press. This player's already surpassed them. The ball's progressed here, landed at this player. One of the central midfielders is going to have to step out to press them, which frees up a player here. This is free now, and now if this defender has the technical ability to maybe play into the wings, this guy's free. This is how you create a big chance. So there's weakness shapes to the 4-4-2 in the sense that you can't really dominate a central midfield unless you were going to drop your strikers here and get superiority. Generally, you have to vacate the center of the pitch, which means a lot of 4-4-2s are going to have to focus their play out wide where they can get numbers like such. So generally a 4-4-2, if you're going to play with it yourself, you're going to want to focus the ball wide, not necessarily through the center, unless you had like 2 false 9s or something. You're going to get overwhelmed in the central areas of the pitch. So that's the kind of obvious weakness of the 4-4-2. The obvious strengths of the 4-4-2 is that you can press man for man each centre backs. You can press man for man wing backs. You can build up with a strong 6. This is your 6 in build up. This is a nice way to build up. You've got the boxes, and if you develop these boxes, you can see all the passing options. A lot of passing options for the 8, a lot of passing options for the 6. Not necessarily in this example. If we're playing against a 4-3-3, you do cut out the passing angles, cut out a lot of the diamonds, which is why in real life 4-3-3 just became the counter to a 4-4-2. Now, even though that sounds brilliant and if you played with a double pivot yourself and you had a 10, there's a 10 free here. When the 10 gets the ball, say there's underlapping, well, this would be underlapping volante. The 8 has a lot to deal with once the ball is played into the 10. So you'll see, given that I've already shown 2 good examples of how to play against the 4-4-2, there is basically any way you wish to play against a 4-4-2 can be supported by some logic or reason or way you believe that combating a 4-4-2 is best. And one of the themes you're going to see in these videos is I don't have a set rule or way to play. What I want is some justification, some reasoning, some logic behind a decision when you are choosing what to do against the 4-4-2. How you're going to get the ball to these, say you're the purple team playing against the orange team, how you're going to do that. I'll start off with the first and easiest example, which is if you are just superior technically and you just have better quality players in 8 or 9, 10 of the positions, if you cover the team in every area, you might as well go man for man. So what I mean by man for man is you're playing a 4-4-2 or a variation of a 4-4-2 against a 4-4-2, because you will be man for man all over the pitch. What does man for man mean? It doesn't mean we're marking man for man. It doesn't mean we have the player instruction, mark specific position on every player. We're not saying that. We're not referring to marking. We're referring to taking up an area of the pitch. You're choosing your right-sided ball-playing defender to be mostly focused in this area. On your average heat map or average position thing, your right-sided ball player will be here. When you look at the average position of a left-sided centre-forward, will be around here or in this vicinity. So this player is responsible for him. What does that mean? It means when this guy gets the ball, he's not going to have much time. He's going to have to pass the ball. He's not going to have much time. He passes the ball. This is going to be intense kind of 1992 Premier League Brexit ball lineup, where every team plays a 4-4-2. They're against each other, and we see who the best team wins. There isn't much tactical innovation going on. It's just we'll match you up and see who's the best technically. So what will happen is, say you're an amazing technical side, you'll play these good balls, you'll play nice passes, you'll found your number 9, your number 9's through, and boom, because these guys don't have the positioning, the marking, the anticipation, the speed, the quality, the work rate to be able to hurt you. You believe you're superior in every area. Why not just push it to the limit and say we can dominate you in every area? So what I like to do when I play against teams that have drafted really poorly, let's say in draft mode, and I feel like everywhere is a good matchup for us. It doesn't happen that often, but it has. Or if I'm losing in a game and I feel like I just want to go for it, man for man is always a good option. Another thing is, if you feel like your opponent's playing a 4-4-2, but they're using underpowered roles like deep lying playmaker, maybe, I don't know, a deep lying forward, a winger on attack, complete wing back, a centre back, like they're 4-4-2, and they have a mid press, not maximum press, so you don't rate the tactic either. You don't value you feel like it's a bit of a bot tactic where they're not using good roles. You could just outmatch them by using superior, more meta type roles and match them up in that way. If you feel like your strategy, your tactics are more meta and just using better, more overpowered roles, you could play 4-4-2 against a 4-4-2 and roll the dice and see if you come out on top, given that you believe that this ball playing defender is so good that when he gets pressed, he'll be able to take a few touches, get by him, boom. You've got a good number 8 who dribbles, carries the ball, finds his, make a nice run because he's got good off the ball. This guy would have sucky off the ball, sucky positioning, low anticipation. He hasn't tracked him. Boom, you've got a nice situation like this. So the easiest way to do this would be a 4-4-2 against 4-4-2 or man for man. Now, another thing you might want to do is the 4-3-3. You have superiority in the middle. You're going to dominate this area of the pitch. You're going to make sure the 6 gets a lot of time on the ball, maybe make them a playmaker like a regista, Roman playmaker, something like this. You're going to focus, roll the ball out to centre-backs, make sure this guy gets a lot of time on the ball, hopefully bait a press from these guys and leave your other dangerous players open. So you could play a 4-3-3, you could play a 4-2-3-1 where you're exploiting the zone 14 or the attacking role here and look to get one of your best players on the ball. Hopefully they're technical enough to surpass the 2-man midfield and find balls into your 10. Now the centre-backs, once this happens, are in a tough position. Do they go here? Do they go here? This is how you can get a lot of great chances playing a 4-2-3-1 against a 4-4-2. Now, if they had other things you can do, and I'm kind of explaining this vaguely because hopefully you see why. Say you wanted to drop it into a 3-4-3, yeah. And you have superiority here in the build-up. Maybe your team isn't as good as building up. You want to have an extra man in defense and stuff like this. Basically, any way that you can kind of justify it, any way you could say to me or someone else, you could say, I want to do this and I want to leave the wing-backs open. Against a 4-4-2, you could do it. There's no real way to play. You could, if basically there isn't any terrible shape against a 4-4-2. The 4-4-2 has natural problems of its own, natural weaknesses in its shape. It's not a perfect formation, even though it has some huge upsides, some huge positives. Now, what I like to do and how I approach each tactic is think about the strengths and weaknesses of the side that we're playing against. Now, if I'm drafting or have a network save or a long-term save, one of my main priorities is a good striker and good centre-backs. Now, I prioritize these positions over all other positions. And the reason I do that is I want to be able to have the option to play a back 4 against the front 2. So if ever I play against 2 strikers, I want to be able to have the option to say, I believe that these 2 defenders are able to match up man for man with these guys and they can deal with it. And then alternatively, I like to have a really high level striker, a really dangerous, tall, quick striker that if he is against 2 centre backs, he's not just going to be done for. He's not out of the game. If a team had really, really strong centre-backs and I just played 1 striker, I still want the option to be able to do that. This guy be quality enough where it's not like game over for him. If you have a striker that's not great and he's against 2 top-level centre-backs, that striker's going to have more likely terrible games because of the quality of these centre-backs. Now, if the team I'm playing against has 2, let's go through different examples, and we'll play against a team that has 2 amazing strikers, but we don't have that great a centre-backs. That is a perfect reason to want to play a 3 at the back initially. That is immediately what I think. Oh man, they drafted Haaland and some other god tier striker. We're going to be in for it. My defenders are good, but not incredible. I want to play a 3 at the back always when I'm playing against teams like that. Let's say their centre-backs are incredible and they got 2 incredible strikers. Well, I'm going to want to match up like this. So then that leaves me with having to configure the midfield and work out the other positions that I'm willing to sacrifice. They're lined up in a 4-4-2. Maybe their central midfielders are not the best. Maybe mine are all right. Maybe this is not that bad. Maybe their fullbacks are not great and not incredibly dangerous because they've spent all their budget on strikers and centre-backs. Now maybe we can just avoid the centre-back area, look to dominate here, look to overwhelm this. So I'm not saying this is the best option or something that I would even do. I'm suggesting that when you approach a 4-4-2, an opposition team, you look at them and you look where the team is extremely strong. You look at maybe they have just a right back who's rubbish. They've spent their money and then they've got a right back that's basically one of the worst players on the game. One of the worst players that anyone would realistically draft, or they've got some injuries, they've got a terrible right back. I might play something like this. This is something I can definitely see myself playing. where I'm trying to cut off the passes to the DMs using my strikers, trying to press the centre backs. I have a good winger on their good left back. If you've seen previous videos, you'll see I very much don't want to leave the good left back in this case. I don't want to leave the good left back free with no one pressing him, no one to deal with him. I don't want this guy to have loads of time and space on the ball. I want to have my strong winger on their strong fullback and then vacate maybe this guy who's not great. Say this right back in my example is kind of poopy. We will then play something like this. This would be a kind of a hybrid of a something like this. This would be absolutely fine formation to play. I would use this against a 4-4-2. We've got three central ball playing defenders on their two strikers. We'll have our 4 against 4 in the middle. Then we'll have our strikers on their centre backs, and then we're exploiting this by vacating the right back position and having an inside forward or an inverted winger, something like that on there. And then what I would do is go focus play down the right. Counterintuitively, I agree, some people will be like, why are we attacking down the right wing where this is their strongest left back? Well, when I refer to the strength of the left back, I'm talking about their ability on the ball and their attacking threats. So this is a really attacking fullback who's not the best defensively, but this is a kind of rubbish on the ball right back, but he's rubbish on the ball, but he's good at defending, let's say. I'll just leave this area alone. I don't mind if he has the ball. Where here, we've got an attacking left back that we're looking to exploit by having a player who's going to track him, going to stay with him, going to stop him getting the ball as much. His job is to not man mark him necessarily, but if you wanted to, I'm not going to say don't do it. You could mark that. You could mark that left back if you chose to. I have nothing against doing that. I do it sometimes for specific reasons. If I want to completely cut this guy off as an option and then force the ball out wide to here, maybe this is a pressing forward like this, pressing forward or support, goes and presses this guy eventually. But this would be the example where the strikers are really good and the centre backs are really good, and we've identified a not so good right back. Every team in draft mode, and unless a team has developed and got endless money, they're always going to have some weak area to want to focus on. And in this example would be 2 good strikers, 2 good centre backs, a fairly decent attacking left back, and a not so good defensive-ish right back. This is how I would look to set up to exploit that. Now, say they had amazing DMs. Got amazing DMs. That's their best players. I definitely don't want to play like this against them and be man for man. This would be the example of almost Indonesia against Germany. I don't want to have this happening to me when their midfield is incredible. So I'd switch to something like this and want to dominate the midfield. There was an example that I forgot to give when it came to their formation, but say it was something like this, where we get the box midfield now, we've got 4 versus 3, our midfielders are not the best, they've got 2 amazing DMs, we're going to do something like this. We'll vacate a fullback who's not that good to make sure that we have more bodies in the middle. These guys are being pressed constantly. There's 2v1s here. When I mention 2v1s in other videos, say a team is developing down, playing from left to right, they're going focus wide. This bike gets the ball, okay, he plays into this pivot, he plays into this. Naturally, your team will shift, okay? Your team moves over and moves like this. And this is where you start to see the double ups and the real blocking of passing options for the 10 and the 9. This is why I like to play a bit more of a narrow, bit more compact style in general, because when teams go out wide, your team's compact, they come together, and look at the 9 and the 10 in this example, all blocked off. You've got the 2 dangerous players. So this example, the 9 and the 10 would be the most dangerous players. They're the killers in the team. This guy is also good, and the pivots are good. This would be perfect example of like Indonesia, who had Grimaldo, they had Xavi Simons, a fair striker, good DMs. This is maybe an option you want to enter. And again, I've got no hard rules about this. I've got no things where I'm like, this has to be the case. But you have to think about the matchups across the pitch. We're talking about being against the 4-4-2 in this video. You're talking about the matchups across the pitch. So if you are to play a 4-2-3-1 against this, is your number 10 capable of putting sufficient pressure onto the DMs? Is this kind of a work rate, tenacious, speedy number 10? Or is it more of a Ozil number 10 who's not really going to stop their build-up, stop their play, a low work rate kind of creative 10 that isn't going to stop their play? And is that going to be a weakness for you? So you'd look at their lineup. I've given an example of if they've got strong centre-backs or not. But also you might want to get some people in behind, in between these lines. And that's what Germany did in one of their games, wanting to do this. You would do this, in my opinion, in attacking three if you felt that your front three was far good enough to press a back four. So you have to think about, in terms of quality and in shape and how they're going to build up, what you want to do in terms of your press. In terms of the positioning of the players, are you happy to have this deficit? Are you happy to have this deficit? Are you happy to have this all blocked? Is that what you're willing to give up? Because there's no perfect tactic to play against another tactic. Whatever anyone says, there's not a perfect tactic. You have to decide the lesser of two evils. In most examples, I like saying lesser of two evils and pick your poison. So if your poison is this rubbish right back is going to get a lot of time on the ball when he's bad on the ball, that's not that bad a poison. And look what you make up for by look at what you get by giving that up. Now, some people will say, oh, this tactic's not overpowered, or this tactic doesn't work, or I've tested this tactic and this tactic's not that good. Well, I would say, have you tested this tactic against a 4-4-2 with two amazing strikers, two amazing centre-backs, and a rubbish right-back? Because it's pretty hard to get a sufficient sample size for those specific requirements. And then, even then, there are variables that can allow you to be unlucky. That right-back, who's not great on the ball, might ping a worldy cross into a player, and it just so happened you got unlucky that game. But we want to reduce the chances of bad luck and bad things happening. Again, in this example, we could just pop this guy, defensive winger, for a bit of balance. Change it like this. This looks like exactly like something I would play, particularly in-game. This looks like a kind of thing I would switch to against the 4-4-2. Put a lot of pressure here on the opposition right winger by forcing them to have to defend this guy, reducing their attacking threat down here. Yes, it's a double-edged sword. Nothing is perfect. We get too far forward, we can get caught on the counter. But this looks like something I will use as a little transition, overload, focus down the right. We're focusing down the area that is not the weakest of our opponent. We are focusing down the area where we have more bodies. So I'll bring back my team to this example here, where we're choosing to do this 3-4-3 offset thing, where they pushed up defensive winger. And then we're going to focus down the right because this is where we have more bodies. If we split the pitch in half right now, we've split the pitch in half. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 on this side, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on this side. So we're going to focus down the side where we have more players, and we are going to look to attack their more vulnerable defensively player by putting more bodies here. But again, this is just one way to skin a cat. This is just one option you have in terms of what you're trying to do. But you have to consider what your opponent's strengths are, who's the best players they have, and not want to play into their strengths. You don't want to have two, if you're playing an opposition with two phenomenal strikers, you don't really want to play man for man in defense unless you're capable of doing so and you know that's going to be favorable for you. You can look, well, maybe you can, maybe it's me, but I can look at certain lineups before the game. I can look at certain matchups and I know this player's having a horrible game. I'll have an insanely good left-sided centre-back like this guy, relative for my league. I'll have an insanely good left-sided centre-back. I'm playing against 4-4-2. I know this guy's smoking them. I know this guy is just, his speed, his strength, his height, he's well-rounded, he's got great defensive qualities. I know that this guy's basically going to ensure that that player's having a bad game. Whereas if I had a backup centre-back, someone who's not so quick, bit slow on the slower side, and he's against a really fast tall striker, I'm pretty sure this guy, it happened not too long ago, I'm pretty sure this guy is going to have a rubbish game because he's not going to have the ability to defend them so well. He's going to need a lot of help. He's going to have people breeze by him. So you're thinking about matchups in terms of technical quality, height, jump and reach. When I say height, I'm referring to jump and reach. Someone's ability to compete in the air. That, I feel, is covered by just saying height. So the height disadvantages, advantages you can have, the speed disadvantages you can have, and say you can exploit certain areas, like say you play against a 4-4-2. This is a 4-4-2 in the orange, and they have high wide wingers. Well, you've got two choices as far as I see it. These are your two choices. You can have your defender tucked in like this, and you can force the player to remain wide. So your original starting shadow striker in, say, this system, which is something I would definitely do, you have a kind of ball playing regista here, couple of volantes. Let's put that in a tactic. Let's go like this. Let's put your inverted wingers and wingers up. Let's get your volantes like this. Let's bang this guy regista. We'll do a quick pick just to make it look right. That didn't help me, did it? We have it like this, and maybe you want to do something like this, which would make perfect sense. But you say, all right, we want to kind of force them into the center, right? You want to force the players into the center. That means you'd have your wingers or inverted wingers not necessarily stay wider, but just not sit narrower. That means that this midfielder is going to have to come in and play this ball. Then we've got players to rush like so. So that's one way you could do it. The other way you could do it is have shadow strikers tucked into the middle. This player receives the ball. Midfield is not an option. If you feel that you've got good matchups on the wing, you've got strong wing backs that can win the ball off of a wide player. Often they're like really good defensively, they're quick, they've got positioning, tackling, all the good stuff, and they're able to cut this out. My main philosophy is you're going to think about what you're trying to achieve each time you position a player and make him a specific role, not Pacific role. Pacific is my team. So this guy has a ball. If you've got shadow striker, naturally his pathway into the center is reduced. Okay, so you're effectively, by putting these guys shadow strikers and in the middle, you're forcing an opposition to go wide. Whether you intended to do that or not, that is something that will naturally happen more, because when you've got the football and you're a footballer, you do not want to pass the ball into where there's a bunch of players. You're going to want to pass the ball to the person who's more likely to be open or has less pressure. This guy's not just going to punt this ball into this guy with all this going on. So this is definitely something I would do and have done before. You could play this guy's shadow striker here like that, and you'd be blocking off this central area. Now a 4-4-2 is completely forced to go wide. Now keep in mind, if that person wants this to happen, that might not be a great idea. If their goal is to get the ball to their good fullback, who's good at carrying the ball, to get the ball to their winger, who's going to have this matchups, and now you're a man down, maybe there's breeze past him and you're in a bad, tricky situation too often. You have to think about, is it worth the risk of cutting off everything to the center, cutting off these dangerous players to let their wide players have the ball, when kind of that's what a 4-4-2 wants. A 4-4-2 kind of wants to get superiority on the wings, because that's a way it's able to get superiority. If you're wondering what I mean by that, as your team shifts over in a 4-4-2, here we've got we've got three players here. The wing back, the winger, and the striker is able to drift wider, especially like move into channels. You've got move into channels on the striker, you've got a wing back here, maybe you've got an underlapping fullback. You've already got a lot of problems happening here for the purple team. So you have to try and think about what you're trying to achieve with this positioning of your players. So say you're playing against the 4-4-2, the most OP, overpowered 4-4-2, like with the inside forwards and stuff, and they're a superior tactic, but you know a bit about the meta and what people are trying to do. They're trying to get the ball wide. If they're trying to get the ball wide, you might want to have your wide wingers here And if these guys are capable defensively, like you've got, say, maybe this type of player who's insane physically. He's like got strength, crazy pace, crazy work rate, maybe not the most creative player. Maybe you'd want to introduce a player like that, a player of this type of profile into the equation. Maybe you get more defensive play here and there, because you know a team's focusing right and left, they can look to find their fullback a lot. This player is able to find, maybe able to apply so much more pressure defensively to this fullback that their whole strategy now is kind of collapsing, because we know they're focusing left and right because that's the meta. They're going to pass it out to their fullback, who's going to have immediate pressure from this lightning guy. And the team's naturally focusing left and right, which means they're going to look for these more wide players more often. So maybe you want to incorporate some kind of attacking 3-4-3, 4-3-3 or 3-4-3, but you want to incorporate some really great defensive options as your attackers that kind of nullify this. Maybe you sacrifice a bit of creativity for the ability to press out here. I played against Limo. Limo is extremely well known for being the 4-4-2 guy. He's always played 4-4-2. And I've made a previous video for his channel talking about how I would effectively try to beat him. And his 4-4-2 is really interesting. And he's got lots of different variations of it where might have defensive wingers. So his big strength is that he's able to press up my fullbacks like crazy, because he's got these good defensive wingers that have got defensive qualities as well as attacking qualities. So for me to then focus left and right would make no sense. I don't want to do that, especially when I've got superiority here. I might not necessarily say play through the middle, but I won't go play left and right. I won't do this. I might just leave this completely blank. I'll leave this blank in the hope that a reducer has hard-coded into it focus more. So does a target forward, so does any kind of playmaker role has focus the ball more. Focus more just means they're going to look for this player to pass to, and all playmakers kind of have that coded into them. So if I had my best player was a number 6, I might want to get this guy free in this area. We don't have focus through the middle. Here, this player gets pressed by a defensive winger like crazy. We find this guy, boom, he's off. He might be reducer on dribble more, tackle harder, get further forward might be a nice option too, because even though he might have to help out defensively against this two, the fact that he's getting forward here, boom, like this, and we might end up having something like this develop in our attack quite often, where the number 6 is now able to kind of be the free guy. So what you're trying to achieve is getting some of your best players who are on the ball free with time on the ball. This is why I quite like sometimes having the Volantes drop in here. Now these guys have got a lot of time on the ball before they can get pressurized. Warning, if they're playing defensive wingers, they're going to be on press more. If they've got a lot of speed, a lot of defensive qualities, you're going to want to try and avoid that trap of if you had like a number 6 here, right, who's on the ball and can't really work in a 4-4-2, so we'll say he's in a double pivot. But say we played a 4-2-3-1, and we know this guy's an absolute beast, defensive midfielder who's rapid and everything. We got this guy as a reducer. This might not be even a favorable thing to do because of how good this player is defensively. Again, if you wanted to, you can just switch around like so. Another thing I maybe forgot to cover is if you wanted to do your matchups like this, 4-4-2 versus 4-4-2, or you just had strikers against defenders for whatever reason, in whatever shape you chose to do. You would want to make sure that this is correct for you. Now, the negative in defense is generally people will draft or sign, if you're in a network save or a normal save, they'll sign a left-footed centre-back, and that left-footed centre-back will not be able to change because he's on the left side. Right-footed centre-back will not change because he's on the right side. Same story with the DMs. So when you play against someone who has, I really try to get both footed centre-backs. I try really hard to get both footed central midfielders, because what I want to do is switch around my central midfielders, switch around my DMs for favourable matchups that will suit them, and that they'll be able to thrive in that position instead of suffering. So it's instead of having a fixed, rigid system where I've got always a left-sided centre-back, which can be exploited, I try and avoid all these exploitable scenarios. And I know some people will be like, well, you know, a left-footed guy here, that gives us passing options. That's great. But if your left-footed centre-back is 6 foot and their right-sided centre-forward is 6'5" and strong, he's just beating him all the time in the air. And then your right-sided centre-back is good on the ball, but he's pretty slow. He's tall and slow, like there's a lot of them centre-backs. And then you've got a rapid striker here, absolutely lightning fast guy that you've positioned on this slow centre-back. He's going to have that yard of pace that bursts past him. That's going to mean that this guy is much worse defensively. So you want to look at situations over the pitch, and this goes for wingers too. It goes for every position. I love being able to switch my wing-backs around if they look like they match up better for the opposition wingers, and I like to mix and match my wingers. So I feel like a lot of people in Football Manager will just like switch their wingers for the sake of it. They'll just be like, oh, I'll just switch them. But another thing, when you're in game and you're playing in matches, you can see your wingers having a bad game. You can just look at the opposition fullback and then be like, oh, that's why he's having a horrible game. All right, maybe we switch him over, give him some time to play against someone who's not so good. Give him some freedom, some time on the ball, maybe drop him back, get him a bit away, stuff like that. Like, say he was pushed up as an inside forward, he's not getting on the ball too much, you look and he hasn't received the ball very much, he's not getting involved with play. Okay, maybe we drop this one. Maybe we drop this inverted winger. Maybe we do something like this. This guy now will be a shadow striker. This guy will be a inverted winger on support. And we're looking at focusing down the right. We kind of get the ball here to this right winger more often. He drops in, comes deep to get the ball, he receives the ball, and now we've got some situations happening. However you want to develop it, if someone showed me an example, I could probably point out the positives and negatives of it, but I don't like having a rigid system, a rigid idea that I'm going to stick with. I don't want you to go away from this video and say, a 4-3-3 is good against a 4-2-3-1, or a 4-3-3 is good against a 4-4-2, or a 4-2-3-1 is good against a 4-4-2. I mean, they're all viable options. A 4-4-2 has a lot of shape weaknesses. It's got a load of super strengths too, like I mentioned. The ability to be able to press everyone man for man, the fact that it's really good defensively, that it drops into a nice organized shape that's hard to play through. It does leave some areas, but what it makes up for is a lot of attacking threat and a lot of ability to press. Easily one of the best, if not the best, pressing formation is a 4-4-2. So when a team doesn't have the ball, they have great ability to press as a 4-4-2 structure. But you have to choose yourself what roles you want to implement, what position you want to put your players to kind of negate it. And you don't want to do anything too silly. This is not too silly. This is fine. In this example, I quite like this one. Let's say we're using a defensive winger, but in an attacking position to like stop their fullback. We've dropped an inverted winger to kind of get in space because their wing back's just a bit too quick. He's not winning 1v1s versus them, so he might as well get on the ball and have a bit more time and space. We'll match up the centre midfield and we'll look at getting the number 10 on the ball, and we're going to match up the strikers man for man if this was a tactic. But you can do everything, like my 3 at the back example, something like this. You can position players where they think about where the opposition doesn't want you to position players and where you are happy to give up space. So this is an example of a 4-4-2 that we're going to play against. There's a bit of a hybrid, but I'm happy to use this as an example. They have a defensive anchor on the right side, and then they have inside forwards, one striker that drops off, one that doesn't. Now, again, just to go over this, if we want to go man for man and we think that we're great everywhere in the pitch, that's fine. We could do that. We can go man for man. We're happy. We feel like we have the better side. Or we can put our kind of defensive player on their attacking player, or vice versa. We can put our more ball winner here and our attacking player here to kind of match up. Or we can choose to exploit the space. There's a box-to-box midfielder here, so there's going to leave space behind. There's not really much central pressure being put, so we could kind of drop a player into here if we want. We could play a shadow striker behind the 8. We could keep a striker centrally. We could move this guy, I don't know, let's say here. So we're exploiting a shape weakness. We're matching up with a back line. We're going to do something like this, and that will look in-game. In-game, it will look something like, what was it again? So he's got the sort of thing, the behind, we're doubling up there. We get a reducer here. We get the shadow striker in behind. We get a volante here, an inverted winger, and we're going to focus on abusing this area of the pitch. This is something definitely I could see myself doing. Something I could see myself implementing in a game. This is something I could see myself doing if the game wasn't going too well. Maybe this guy's an inverted wing back to come into the middle to help. Variations like this where we're abusing the fact that they're not going to change their formation. They've got a box-to-box midfielder who's getting forward and is going to leave space behind. That's one of their main sources of threat here. And we're getting a player involved with play like this. We're dropping a shadow striker in, offset shadow striker like that. We're going to have the anchor here. The anchor's positioned basically marking no one for the meantime. And then the box-to-box midfielder is being doubled up or dealt with like so. We kind of vacate the anchor position. This is something I do all the time. I don't care if the anchor gets on the ball. I don't think he's going to cause us a shit ton of problems. He's got 10 passing, 9 vision, 9 first touch, 7 or so dribbling. He's not going to be a really effective player on the ball. I'm happy to just leave him alone in the deal to kind of attack someone else, to stop another person from getting on the ball, like this guy who would be way more creative relatively. Still not the best, but we're picking our poison in terms of looking to exploit duels, make our duels favorable, make our dominance or area in the pitch favorable. So say we wanted to be in a favorable position like this. We wanted to have a majority here. We wanted the wing backs to deal with these guys. We were happy to drop these guys in to have this as our defensive player. An attacking player, maybe the striker comes in, or this is another perfect example of something I would do is, let me get these roles correct, is make sure that we do this. So another option, I'm hoping I'm giving you a lot of options here, hopefully not too many. So we play a 4-3-3 like this. Boom, this guy shadow striker. This is something I would definitely do and have done, where now we've kind of vacated the right back a little bit, but we're dropping a player in behind the box-to-box midfielder. We're vacating the anchor position. We have superiority in defense, and we have a winger here attack with a front three, and this guy is going to be the player that we're looking to get into the space. This is the space, and we see this guy having an amazing game. Say I played this game, and prior to the game, I know that whoever plays here is going to have a better game on average, just because there isn't the same amount of pressure that can be able to be applied. Now, what they could do is get their fullback and make them sit narrower and tuck in here. This would be a great counter to it. They would need their number 2 to come in and help to deal with this scenario. But if they don't do that and they leave the fullback wide, this guy is guaranteed to have a good game. He's going to get a lot of time on the ball. By having these guys outnumbered, they're going to have a lot of less time on the ball. Boom, boom, boom. More players to double up, more players to help defensively to kind of stop them. So this is exactly something I would do. And because I've come up with this idea right now and thought of that, that is what I will implement against Honey Badger and Halifax in my next game, is play with a back three with 2 wing backs here, vacate a right back, vacate this guy, let him have the ball. That's what I'm giving up. That's the poison that I've picked, let's say. And then try and get my shadow striker in behind the box-to-box midfielder, double up on the box-to-box midfielder, don't really care about the anchor, he's not going to be a big attacking threat. Also look to abuse the left back with our amazing right winger. So I hope that explains how I think about Football Manager in terms of playing against certain formations, but in this case we're talking about against 4-4-2s, and I believe you'll see there's less options. When there's more balanced tactics or other types of tactics, there'll be less great options, but there are a lot of great options against a 4-4-2. But you want to really think about what you're trying to exploit, how you're going to create chances, how you're going to defend against them, how it's going to look, what you're giving up for what you're getting. You always are giving up something. Every time you're attacking and pressing high, you leave your back line vulnerable. Every time you're sitting in a low block, you are not as attacking a threat. Every time you're compact, you allow other team to be out wide. Every time you're wide, you allow people to play through the middle. You just have to pick which is the best of the worser options, which sound better on paper, and where you feel cannot be neglected. Where can I not have a bad matchup? Where will be terrible to have a matchup? And making sure that your correct players are placed in the correct positions throughout the game. So yeah, that was a long explanation, one of the longer videos I've done. And this is just on the 4-4-2. In my next videos, I'll be talking about how to beat 4-3-3s and 4-2-3-1s and other three at the back tactics and stuff like that. Make this a bit of a series. But I'll never have a strict, you must play this way against this way. I've seen in some other videos where they're like, this is the best formation to play. There is no tactics without players. I forget who said that. I think it might be Bielsa. Forgive me if I'm misquoting someone else and giving Bielsa credit for too much. Oh yeah, speaking of Bielsa, I won a final. My first ever competitive draft final was against Big Meaty in the final of the FM playoffs. And I was playing, I think, a 4-2-3-1 against a 4-3-3, attacking 4-4-3. And it wasn't going too well. So what I decided to do, because we conceded a penalty and we wasn't creating too much, I decided to switch to the Bielsa 4-3-3, and it looks something like this. And as you can see, we have superiority here while allowing a DM in a lot of space. 4-3-3. I learned this from a Nagelsmann video I watched, where a 3-3-3-1 is really effective against a 4-4-2 because if you are putting a player in between all of the lines. All of these players are in between the lines. Everyone here is in between the lines. In between the lines, just they're in space. Now this is risky because so are your opposition. Your opposition lines are free, but so are yours. And we changed this 3-3-3-1 and we ended up winning the game. And it was pretty awesome to win it with a Bielsa style tactic. But this is something I was willing to do in-game, willing to change and take more risk. I might make a separate video on in-game stuff. But as well, if you're trying something and it's not working in the game and it's not working how you planned, how you hoped for, things just ain't going right, just change it. Just change to some, maybe drop someone in the 6, drop someone, get someone in a position, change something. These tactics are overpowered, but they are tested against bot tactics. They're tested against bad tactics. All the OP tactics are tested against not amazing opposition tactics with amazing opposition instructions, and they're not tested against a clever manager who's going to use other positions to counter certain strengths. You can always negate certain tactics and nullify players with the correct players or the correct position or the correct plan. So yeah, if there's any questions on this video, feel free to ask me in the comments. You can follow me on Twitch, Fletcher Source. You can follow me on Twitter, Fletcher Source. Feel free to message me, ask me any questions, anything you didn't understand. Don't worry about, maybe if you worry about sounding stupid, no question is going to sound stupid to me. I'd rather I know that I explain some things poorly sometimes and maybe contradict myself in certain ways. Some things definitely sound contradictory because they're very niche and there's lots of different examples and things can change. Someone will say, you said this about this and that doesn't make sense because you said the opposite, and there's things that are very niche and very specific. So tactics can get extremely complicated. So yeah, I hope that helped you. Let me know, give me a message. Tell me which formation you'd like me to do next. Cheers, bye.